Is my screen visible? Okay. So yesterday in the class, we studied about break-even analysis, right? So in break-even analysis is a part of CVP analysis. So what is basically CVP analysis? It is nothing but it is the cost, volume, profit analysis. So we are drawing the graph. So yesterday we drew a graph in the notebook. So where we are plotting it against production and sales, right? Production and sales with cost. Same graph is applicable here. It is used in CVP analysis, which is the cost, volume, profit analysis. So here we are finding out the various cost incurred. So there will be a graph there, and according to the graph, we can determine whether the margin that we have is a. So we can see this is the graph itself which we have drawn. So we can determine whether we are getting a profit or incurring loss. And there is something known as a margin of safety. So we'll be discussing what is margin of safety. Then from the graph itself, we know that what is total fixed cost, total variable cost, and then comes a small line here. This is called the tax. Okay, total cost including tax. If you have not drawn that, please draw it also. This is a tax, and you can shade it in another direction. Okay, as I say, tax that is shown here. And also denote margin of safety. Okay, please denote margin of safety inside your graph. No need to write down the values that is shown here. Just draw this. So in the previous graph itself, we have drawn it in the notebook yesterday, and just complete that. Include margin of safety and tax. Margin of safety and tax. Okay. So that is what we are going to analyze. So in the CVP analysis, basically we will get to know about the fixed cost, the variable cost, the profit margin, margin of safety, the various taxes incurred. So these are all obtained from the CVP analysis or the cost volume profit graph. Next, write down contribution margin. Write down contribution margin. And write down the definition given. It is the difference between sales and variable cost. It is the difference between sales and variable cost. And it includes raw material cost, direct labor cost, and sales commission that vary with volume. According to volume, the cost differs. It differs with the amount of material that we are ordering. So it is a difference between sales and variable cost, which include raw material cost, direct labor cost, and sales commission that vary with volume. Okay, then write down in the next line. Contribution is equal to sales revenue minus total variable cost. Sales revenue minus total variable cost. Sales revenue minus total variable cost. Next line, contribution per unit. Contribution per unit is equal to selling price per unit S minus variable cost per unit V. Selling price per unit S minus variable cost per unit V. So selling price per unit S and variable cost per unit V we discussed in the last class yesterday, and we have denoted it as S and V. Okay. So that is what is shown here. Selling price per unit S and variable cost per unit V. Next, write down profit volume, profit per volume ratio, profit per volume ratio, profit per volume ratio, and write down it is the ratio of contribution margin to sales. It's the ratio of contribution margin to sales. Ratio of contribution margin to sales. So the statement itself, it is the ratio of contribution margin to sales. So we have already denoted contribution margin here, S minus V, which is the selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit. So S minus V by selling price per unit S. So in the next line, write down P by V ratio is equal to P by V ratio is equal to selling price minus variable cost per unit by selling price per unit. Okay, please include selling price per unit. Okay, selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit by selling price per unit. Please include per unit here. Okay, selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit by selling price per unit. Selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit by selling price per unit, which is equal to S minus V by S. S minus V by S. S minus V by S. And it can be also written as sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. So contribution margin can also be stated as sales revenue minus total variable cost. Okay, these two are different. This is sales revenue while this is the selling price per unit. Okay, this is total variable cost while this is the variable cost per unit of the product that we are placing. So for one product, how much is the variable cost? That is what is meant by this one. Okay, variable cost per unit, while this is the total variable cost and this is the total sales revenue. That is our profit. So sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Okay, next write down the relationship of BEP. What is BEP? What is BEP? Please respond.
Break-even point.
Yeah, break-even point. So the relationship of BEP or break-even point to P by V ratio. P by V ratio. And write down BEP sales is equal to fixed cost by P by V ratio. Fixed cost by P by V ratio. So fixed cost we had already written it as capital F in the previous class. Okay, that is what is fixed cost, and the fixed cost by P by V ratio is the relationship between BEP and P by V ratio. So when if you have got fixed cost and P by V ratio, then you can easily find out BEP. So for that purposes and all, we are using this equation. Next is margin of safety. margin of safety. Write down. It is the difference between the actual sales and BEP. It's the difference between the actual sales and BEP. It's the difference between the actual sales and BEP. And the relation of margin of safety with the P by V ratio is that margin of safety is equal to profit by P by V ratio. Profit by P by V ratio. That is the relationship of margin of safety. Okay. In terms of explaining margin of safety, it is nothing but the point which we are safe. Okay. That means the profit that we are incurring, that is greater than break-even point. So at this point, the loss and profit incurred are zero. So whatever cost you are spending is also gone for sales. Okay. So you are getting back in sales, and also it is going out in it is costing you that much for producing the product itself. So that is the break-even point, and from that point, this is the safe point. So until this point, there is always you will get the revenue up to this point. So this is the point through which margin of safety occurs, and above that, it is not always constant. This region you will get always, the profit is always obtained, while this one we will get it very less, and that this is why it is called as margin of safety. So margin of safety here, it is the actual sales and BEP. So you can see that point itself. Here is the BEP. So this is the actual sales, and the actual sales minus that BEP point is actual sales minus the BEP point is the margin of safety. So these are the equations that we are going to use for the problems. So write down the first problem. A firm incurs fixed cost of rupees 8,000. A firm incurs fixed cost of rupees 8,000. A firm incurs fixed cost of rupees 8,000 and a variable cost of rupees 20,000 and variable cost of rupees 20,000, and its total sale receipt. Okay, it's a total sale. Okay, its total sale receipt is rupees 30,000 and its total sales receipt is rupees 30,000. Determine the break-even point. Determine the break-even point. Determine the break-even point. Has everyone written the question down? Have everyone written the question? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, while looking at the question itself, it's a direct question. We have to only find out what you have to find out BEP. Okay, break-even point. We have to find out break-even point. So we already know various equations. Okay, we know break-even point equations and all. Okay. Okay. Here, what are the given data? Look at the given data. So we have the fixed cost, that is rupees 8,000, which is denoted by F. So write down solution. given and write down one another the other. Write downwards, okay? Don't write it like this. Write downwards. Fixed cost and in the bracket capital F. Fixed cost is equal to rupees 8,000. Rupees 8,000. Then what is the next given data? Please respond. What is the next given data?
Variable cost.
Yeah, variable cost. So variable cost is denoted by V, small letter V. So write down variable cost, small letter V is equal to 20,000. Rupees 20,000. Variable cost is equal to rupees 20,000. Then next is the sales receipt, or it is the sales revenue. Okay, it is known as its total sales receipt is given, but it is the sales revenue. So given in the next slide, right? Sales revenue, sales revenue in bracket, write V, small letter V, is equal to rupees 30,000. Rupees 30,000. Rupees 30,000. Okay. Here the problem is a direct problem itself, but the things that are given here. Okay, this is the fixed cost, right? Fixed cost is given. Then the variable cost and sales are given. Sales revenue are given. So it is given as total sales receipt, and also this is the total variable cost. Okay, it is the total variable cost and the total sales receipt. Okay, the given data are total sales receipt and total variable cost. The problem here is that while stating earlier, so if you look at here, okay, you can see sales revenue contribution is stated as sales revenue minus total variable cost. While if it is taking per unit, contribution per unit, it was selling price per unit, that is S, and variable cost per unit, that is B. Okay, selling price per unit, if it is set as per unit, then we can term it as S, while variable cost per unit is V. But here it is given as total variable cost and total sales revenue. So when looking at here, contribution formula is given as sales revenue minus total variable cost. Okay, it is given as sales revenue minus total variable cost. Okay, and this ratio, this is called the contribution ratio, right? So contribution ratio is nothing but P by V ratio. So look at the formula for P by V ratio. P by V ratio. So you can see here, this is sales revenue minus total variable cost. So why are we taking P by V ratio? So we have to find BEP. So normally, if you look at the last class that we have discussed earlier, that means yesterday's class, you can see an equation BEP in units, or Q is equal to F by S minus V. Q is equal to F by S minus V. So in that condition, the F is fixed cost, while S and V were selling price per unit, and V is the variable cost per unit. But here there is no per unit. It is all the total cost, the total variable cost and the total sales revenue that is given. So for that purpose, we are exploiting the equation that we have learned earlier, that is BEP is equal to, we know that it is, we have to find BEP. So BEP is equal to fixed cost by P by V ratio. Okay, and from that P by V ratio, we have to use. So we have to find PYV ratio. So PYV ratio is sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. So for that purpose, we are writing this equation. Okay, did you understand that? Do I have to explain it again? Please respond. Did you understand that concept? Why did we take BEP equation from P by V ratio?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you understood. Okay, then please write down BEP is equal to, first write down, don't write this one down now, I'll tell you. Please write down in the next line. BEP is equal to this equation. BEP is equal to fixed cost by P by V ratio. Fixed cost by P by V ratio. That is BEP. In the next line, write P by V ratio is equal to P by V ratio is equal to P by V ratio is equal to sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. Sales revenue minus total variable cost by sales revenue. So that is P by V ratio. Then write down in the next line, which is equal to this one. 30,000 minus 20,000 by 30,000. 30,000 minus 20,000 by 30,000. 30,000 minus 20,000 by 30,000, and if you find out, the answer will be 0.3, which is equal to 0.3. Then write down in the next line, therefore BEP is equal to, therefore BEP is equal to, BEP is equal to, so we have already stated the equation, no need to write it again. So write down BEP is equal to 8,000 by 0.3. So 8,000 is the fixed cost and 8,000 by 0.3, which is equal to 24,000. Write down rupees 24,000. Okay, write down rupees 24,000. Okay, so what does 24,000 mean? So we know that variable cost is 20,000, sales revenue is 30,000. So 30,000 is the sales revenue, that is the profit that we are going to earn, while at 24,000 it is BEP. So it means that at 24,000, whatever 24,000 is the cost that we are using for production, and also we are getting the sales. Okay, so there is no profit incurred or no loss. Okay, that is what is the meaning of 24,000 here. So the graph that we have shown here, so this point is 24,000 from the problem. This point is 24,000. So above this is profit and below that is loss. Okay, above 24,000, that is, it is 30,000, then the sales revenue. From the sales revenue, if you are looking, 6,000 is the profit. So it is the sales revenue minus BEP is the profit or loss incurred. So if your sales revenue is 30,000 and if you are minusing it with BEP, then we get profit which is equal to 6,000. Okay, so did you understand up to this much? Did you understand this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then in the next line, look at this. So there is no profit. Break-even point is reached when the sales value is rupees 24,000. At rupees 24,000 sales value, there is no profit or no loss. And this is because the variable cost at the sales value of rupees 24,000 is 2 into 24,000 by 3. Please write this down. 2 into 24,000 by 3. Okay. So what did that mean? So what is this 2 by 3? 2 by 3 is okay. 2 by 3 is nothing but it is the sales revenue, variable cost by sales revenue. Okay, 2 by 3 is nothing but it is the sales revenue by what is it? Sorry, it is the variable cost by sales revenue. Okay, it is the variable cost by sales revenue, and the zeros are getting cut out. That is what is happening here. Okay, it is 20,000 by 30,000 into 24,000. Please write down 2 by 3 into 24,000, which is equal to rupees 16,000. So it is nothing but the ratio of how much profit is incurred. So we are getting a sales of rupees 30,000 while we are getting a variable cost of 20,000. So if we are taking a ratio of the variable cost to sales revenue, we are getting a profit up to 2 by 3. What is the decimal point? That much. Okay. And that profit with the break-even point. That is what is incurred here. So we are getting a profit, and that profit margin is set by 24,000 into 2 by 3, which is equal to rupees 16,000. And we have got 16,000 here, and we have the fixed cost here, which is 8,000. Fixed cost is 8,000. So the total cost will be equal to 16,000 plus 8,000, which is equal to rupees 24,000. So please write down total cost is equal to 16,000 plus 8,000, 16,000 plus 8,000, 16,000 plus 8,000, which is equal to 24,000. $24,000. So what we are doing here is we are just checking the break-even point with the sales of rupees 24,000. That is what we are doing here. So the problem actually ends till here. You only have to write till here. This is just a notary portion which I have been explaining. So the problem actually ends till here. We just have to determine the break-even point, and the break-even point was 24,000. This is nothing but the total cost that is incurring, and we are determining it with the fixed and variable cost. So at 24,000, all the expenses, specifically fixed and variable, are met only by generating a sale of 24,000. So the fixed and variable costs are met by BEP. That is the meaning of this calculation. This is not needed. You just have to remember this is the final of the problem. Okay, write down the next problem. Please write down the next problem. Tejas Associates has the following details. Tejas Associates has the following details. Fixed cost is equal to rupees 2 lakh. Sorry, rupees 20 lakh. Fixed cost is equal to rupees 20 lakh. Rupees 20 lakh. Variable cost per unit is equal to rupees 100. Variable cost per unit is equal to rupees 100. Variable cost per unit is equal to rupees 100. Selling price per unit is equal to rupees 200. Selling price per unit is equal to rupees 200. Selling price unit is equal to rupees 200. Find the following. So we have to find 4 things. Please write down one by one downwards. A, the break-even sales quantity. That is the break-even point. Okay, the break-even sales quantity. Then comes the break-even sales. Break-even sales. Then for condition C, please write down this one first. If the actual production quantity is 60,000, if the actual production quantity is 60,000 for these two conditions, okay. For C and D, we have to write if the actual production quantity is 60,000, find C contribution and D margin of safety. Contribution and margin of safety. Okay, just write down the given data. So one of the given data is fixed cost, which is rupees 20 lakh. Fixed cost F, which is 20 lakh, is 20 lakh. Variable cost per unit V is equal to rupees 100. Variable cost per unit V is equal to rupees 100. Selling price per unit S is equal to rupees 200. Selling price per unit S is equal to rupees 200. So these are the given data, and another given data is the actual production quantity 60,000. That is only for the case of C and D, and only for that purpose we will be writing that. So this is the given data, and the solution we will discuss in the next class. So next I will take the attendance.